Our nation's immigration system is broken, and with immigrants becoming a bigger factor within our economy, it must be fixed. With the current disagreements, progress on this issue is impossible. New laws and solutions must be proposed.
Many complain that the immigrants don't contribute enough to our economy, but in fact, Christopher Matthews from Time magazine explained a study that showed immigrants raise the overall standard of living of American workers by boosting wages and lowering prices. Also, as stated by Leo Nkondo of immigrationpolicy.org, immigrant workers make up a larger share of the U.S. labor force, 12.4%, than they do of the U.S. population, which is 11.5%. This shows that even with limited resources, immigrant workers are actively contributing to our economy, even more so than us Americans in some cases. To allow these immigrants to progress in their occupations, we must allow them basic rights. Nationwide, illegal immigrants should be able to receive affordable education, and they should be allowed to live here without a constant fear of having to go to court and prove that they are so-called worthy of living in this nation.
In their court cases appealing to stay in the U.S., we must do a better job of finding connections for them here in the U.S., whether that's living with other immigrants or family or friends. It's the right thing to do. In order to do so, we must hire more judges and attorneys in our court system to deal with the cases of these immigrants. As of now, an average court case dealing with a decision on deportation lasts about 7 minutes, according to Eli Saslow of the Washington Post. Hiring these judges and attorneys will provide a fair due process that the immigrants desperately need to plead their case. There needs to be enough time for the immigrants to get across what their home country is like and how they can contribute in a nation such as ours. Doing this would streamline legal immigration for those who pass the necessary background checks.
Immigrants are increasingly having an impact on our nation. Undocumented immigrants, being such a large part of our society, need to be fairly acknowledged. Avoiding the immigrants and trying to expel every single one from our nation isn't the right approach. Rather, accepting them into our nation as skilled workers, being able to contribute to our economy is crucial. With the increasing diversity of the United States, rejecting all people who don't fit the American stereotype is no longer a realistic approach. Having such a negative attitude on the issue is ironic, as well as considering that we're all ancestors of some other country, which means we're immigrants at some point.
One way to do this is to make H-1B visas more accessible for the highly skilled immigrants. H-1B visa cap would have to be raised from 65,000 people to 125,000 people a year. As Vivek Wadhwa also states in his interview, living in Silicon Valley himself, Wadhwa sees firsthand how undocumented immigrants granted with these visas can come in and provide innovation and success for our country. Leaving the opportunity to further propel our nation by deporting these skilled workers needs to be avoided. Rather than having a cap limit for the amount of H-1B visas being given out yearly, I think there should be a minimum that has to be given out to ensure that we are allowing a fair amount of these immigrants an opportunity to generate an increasingly stable economy for our nation.
A largely controversial issue within illegal immigration is whether or not the undocumented immigrants themselves should be able to receive in-state tuition. Many people who are con immigration say that when illegal immigrants receive in-state tuition, they are receiving benefits that some Americans themselves aren't able to receive. However, according to PewHispanic.org, the median household income of unauthorized immigrants is $36,000 a year, well below the $50,000 median household income for U.S.-born residents. Being in such a state of poverty, either its immigrants receive in-state tuition or they can't go to college at all, simply because they cannot afford the out-of-state costs. For Americans who have had an easy access to education their whole lives, they can easily afford to pay out-of-state tuition if they decide to go to a college out-of-state. Immigrants are a large contributing factor to the overall success of our nation's economy, and for it to remain that way, we must make small sacrifices such as allowing the undocumented immigrants to receive in-state tuition at our colleges.
Another law that should be passed accompanying immigrants having access to in-state tuition is the 1972 Supreme Court ruling that permits equal rights to education for all children in the United States. Even if they are an undocumented immigrant, doing so would create tremendous headway in making further progress on fixing our immigration system. If this law was passed, immigrant children would finally be able to receive an education, expanding their horizons here in the United States. Immigrants without an education, especially undocumented, have far less job opportunities, forcing them into the cycle of poverty. This is why they are here in the United States. In order to allow the immigrants to live their dream and strive, we must allow them education. Many coming to the United States at a very young age are put in an immediate disadvantage in our society, being denied education. Allowing them this education would definitely allow for them to contribute to our nation in more ways than we already do. The lack of support for immigrants who are currently in our nation is a huge setback for them and for the flow of our economy. These immigrants produce our foods, tend to our communities and homes, and countless other things. To be ruled out of being part of the American culture due to your immigration status is very unfortunate and needs to be changed. We need to allow them education so they can continue to look at a bright future ahead of them and the United States of America.
We as a nation need to collaborate to facilitate the immigrants that have already settled within our nation. Taking steps such as allowing them to receive education and fair court trials to remain here if they qualify is critical. Trying to deport these immigrants who are already in the loop in our economy of our nation is something that is holding us back as a nation. Sooner, rather than later, we need to accept the hardworking immigrants as part of our nation. This is the only thing that can fix the immigration issue because locating and deporting over 11 million people who are a large working portion of our nation is extremely unrealistic. Thank you.